My parents gave my sister a new house for graduation. Then they got to my present. It is a gym membership, they said. I got angry and I left. A month later, when my sister lost the house in a casino, it was the beginning of everything else. My name is Mia. I am in my early 30s, and I work a steady office job that pays the bills and keeps my life predictable. I live alone in a small apartment in a big city. Nothing fancy, just clean counters, quiet nights and space. That is mine. I have always liked it that way. From the outside, my family looked perfect. Holiday photos on the wall, big dinners, loud laughter. The kind of family people assume is close. But inside that dynamic, there was a clear order, and I learned it early. Barbara, my older sister, was the golden one. Everything came easier to her, or at least it seemed to. When she messed up, someone cleaned it up. When she wanted something, it appeared. A new car after an accident. Extra help when classes got tough. Excuses made on her behalf before anyone even asked. I was the opposite, the responsible one. The one who did not need help. The one who could handle it. If something went wrong in my life, the answer was always the same. You will figure it out. And I did, over and over again. That night at the graduation dinner, the pattern finally became impossible to ignore. We were seated at a long mahogany table, in a private room of a steakhouse that smelled of roasted garlic and expensive cologne. The air was thick with the heat of too many bodies and the noise of performative joy. My father stood up, tapping a spoon against his wine glass. The room went silent. A hush of expectation falling over the aunts, uncles, and cousins who had gathered to worship at the altar of Barbara. He held up a thick manila envelope. He spoke about pride, about future, about how Barbara deserved the very best start in life. He handed her the envelope. She tore it open, her manicured nails ripping through the paper. She pulled out a set of keys and a deed. The room erupted. Applause, phones held high to capture the moment. Proud smiles everywhere. My father turned to the room, beaming. He announced that the house was worth around $120,000. Everyone knew it. They did not whisper it. They announced it like a trophy. Barbara played surprised, covering her mouth with her hand, but her smile gave her away. She had known. She always knew. Then, the applause died down. The room shifted its attention to me. My father turned to me, his smile tightening just a fraction. "And for you, Mia," he said. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, white envelope. It was thin. It was light. I took it. My hands were cold. I opened the flap and slid the contents out onto the tablecloth. It was a plastic card. Blue and gray. A membership card to a budget gym chain. "And for you, Mia?" "A gym membership," he repeated. People laughed. It was not an awkward, polite chuckle. It was loud. It was a release of tension. I felt something crack inside my chest. It was a physical sensation, like a rib snapping under pressure. I looked down at the table, tracing a scratch in the wood with my finger, trying to breathe normally. I was not angry yet. I was embarrassed. I felt shrunk, like I had just been reminded of my place in the hierarchy. My mother leaned in. Her voice pitched high enough for the relatives to hear. "It is practical," she said. My father joked about staying healthy. A few relatives laughed like they were relieved it was not happening to them. Barbara leaned over, the keys to her new home jingling in her hand. Ian whispered something about how I could upgrade myself if I tried harder. I did not answer. I did not trust my voice. That was the moment I understood something important. This was not thoughtless. It was not a mistake. It was deliberate. And if I stayed, I would spend the rest of my life being grateful for scraps. I did not make a speech when I left that night. I did not flip a table or shout across the room. I just stood up, picked up my coat, and said, "I am heading out." My mother frowned like I had embarrassed her. My father barely looked up from his steak. Barbara smirked, already distracted by the attention around her. The cold air outside hit my face, and I kept walking until my hands stopped shaking. I sat in my car for a long time staring at the steering wheel, replaying every laugh in my head. That was when I decided I was done pretending this was normal. Within a week, I found my apartment small, quiet, and mine. I moved without asking for help. I did not tell my parents where I was going. I did not make announcements. I just left. For the first few days, the silence felt strange. Then it felt peaceful. I thought the distance would protect me. I thought the humiliating dinner was the climax of our dysfunction. I was wrong. It was only the prologue. Because while I was building a wall of silence, my sister was already busy destroying the foundation of the gift she had been given. And soon, the wreckage would come for me. A month passed. The calendar on my wall turned a page, and with it, the sharp edges of that graduation dinner began to soften. Replaced by the quiet rhythm of a life that finally belonged to me. I settled into a routine that would look boring to anyone else, but to me, it felt like luxury. You worked during the day, where I sat in a cubicle that demanded nothing more than my time and focus. Simple dinners at night. Usually eaten standing at the counter or sitting cross-legged on my second-hand rug. I bought a cheap pothos plant for the window and watched it grow. Every new green leaf that unfurled felt like proof that something in my life was finally moving forward instead of sideways. My apartment was small. The kitchen was barely a hallway, and the view from the living room was a brick wall of the adjacent building. But it was clean. The counters were empty of clutter. The air smelled of lemon soap and coffee, not the heavy, suffocating perfume my mother wore, or the stale scent of my father's cigars. Most importantly, it was silent. For the first few days, that silence felt strange, heavy, like the pressure before a storm. I kept waiting for a door to slam, or a voice to rise in complaint. Then, slowly, the silence turned into peace. I started to sleep through the night. I stopped flinching when my phone buzzed. I thought I had escaped. I thought that by physically removing myself from the house, I had removed myself from the drama. I was naive. My family did not accept my resignation. Barbara broke first. In the beginning, she called, her voice light and teasing in the voicemails she left. She asked how the place was, if it was cozy, a word she used as a polite synonym for small. I did not answer. She texted later, sending a photo of her living room. It showed gleaming hardwood floor-to-ceiling windows, and a brand new sectional sofa. The caption read, "Still cannot believe it is mine." I muted the thread. My parents tried next. My mother left voicemails that swung wildly between concern and criticism. She asked if I was done being dramatic. She told me I was hurting the family. My father texted once, a short, command-style message, "Call when you cool off." I did not respond. Every message felt less like concern and more like irritation that I was not playing my assigned role. I was the audience. I was the fixer. I was not supposed to be the one who walked away. Weeks turned into a month. The messages slowed down. I began to relax. I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, they were learning to live without me. I spent my evenings reading or watching the city lights flicker against the brick wall outside. I felt safe. Then, late one evening, the texture of the silence changed. I was washing a plate in the sink, the water warm over my hands, when my phone began to buzz on the counter. It vibrated with an urgency that made my stomach turn over. I wiped my hands on a towel and looked at the screen. Barbara. I almost ignored it. I had ignored dozens of calls before. But something in my gut told me to answer. It was not the time of day, or the persistence of the ringing. It was instinct. A survival mechanism, honed over 3 decades of living in a house, where chaos could erupt from a clear blue sky. I slid my thumb across the screen and held the phone to my ear. I did not say hello. There was a sound on the other end that stopped my breath. It was a jagged, gasping noise. Barbara was crying. Not her usual performative crying, the kind she used to get out of a speeding ticket, or guilt my mother into buying her a dress. This was real panic. It was wet and ugly and terrifying. "Mia," she choked out. "Mia, you have to help me." I leaned back against the counter, the cold laminate pressing into my lower back. "What happened?" I asked. My voice was steady, contrasting sharply with hers. "I made a mistake," she sobbed. "A stupid mistake." She talked in circles at first, her words tripping over each other. She spoke about a trip with friends. A weekend getaway to celebrate the house, the freedom, the life she deserved. They had gone to a casino. Just for fun, she said. Just to see. She started winning. That was the hook. She won a few $100s at a blackjack table, and the rush convinced her that she was special, that the laws of probability did not apply to her. She thought she could double the money. She thought she could turn the gift into a fortune. "I kept betting," she whispered. "I did not stop. I lost the cash I brought. Then I went to the ATM. Then I took a cash advance." I closed my eyes, pinching the bridge of my nose. "Barbara," I said, cutting through her rambling. "How much did you lose?" There was a long pause. The only sound was her ragged breathing and the hum of the refrigerator in my quiet kitchen. "I did not have the cash," she said, her voice barely audible. "I signed a marker. They gave me credit because I had the deed. I put the house up, Mia. I thought I would win it back. I knew the next hand was going to be the one." The air left my lungs. She had not just gambled away her savings. She had gambled the house, the $120,000 gift, the symbol of her golden status. And, I asked, though I already knew the answer. "I lost it," she wailed. "I lost it all. They took the papers. It is gone." I sat down on the edge of my bed, staring at the small pothos plant in the window. Its leaves were still green. Still reaching for the light, oblivious to the disaster unfolding through the phone line. I did not interrupt her sobbing. I did not offer comfort. I did not say, "It will be okay," because it would not be okay. When she finally ran out of breath, there was a heavy, suffocating silence. "Mom and Dad are freaking out," she finally said, her voice small and trembling. Of course they were. The foundation had cracked. The golden child had tarnished herself. And as I sat there in the safety of my sanctuary, I realized with a sinking dread that they would not be looking to fix her. They would be looking for someone to carry the weight of the wreckage. I hung up the phone without saying goodbye. The silence of my apartment rushed back in, but it no longer felt peaceful. It felt like the eye of a storm. The sanctuary was breached. The chaos had found me. The campaign began the next morning. The sun had barely touched the skyline when my phone started vibrating against the nightstand. It was a rhythmic, persistent buzzing that felt less like a notification and more like a drill trying to breach my defenses. I let the first few calls go to voicemail. I needed coffee before I could handle the fallout of Barbara's disaster. But as I stood in my small kitchen, waiting for the kettle to boil, the text messages started arriving. They popped up on the screen in rapid succession. A digital assault coordinated by two people who had never been this unified when I actually lived with them. "Family helps family," my father wrote. It was a short sentence, but it carried the weight of a commandment. My mother was more verbose. She left a voicemail that I played on speaker, her voice filling the quiet space I had worked so hard to curate. "Mia, please pick up," she said. Her tone was soft, urgent, stripped of the criticism she usually reserved for me. "Barbara is in a bad place. This is not the time to hold grudges. She has had a run of terrible luck. We all need to pull together." I stared at the steam rising from my mug. Terrible luck. That was the narrative they had chosen. Not addiction. Not recklessness. Not stupidity. Luck. As if Barbara had been walking down the street and a piano had fallen on her head. Rather than her walking into a casino and voluntarily signing away her future. They were rewriting reality in real time, and they expected me to read from the script. I did not reply. I went to work. I sat at my desk and tried to focus on spreadsheets, but my stomach was in knots. I knew my silence would not stop them. It would only force them to change tactics. 2 days later, the tactic arrived at my front door. It was a Tuesday evening. I had just come home. Kicking off my shoes and looking forward to the simple pleasure of a quiet dinner. Then, there was a knock. It was not a polite rap. It was a heavy, desperate thudding. I froze. No one had my address. I had moved in secret. I had been careful. I walked to the door on silent feet and looked through the peephole. Barbara stood in the hallway. She looked nothing like the golden girl from the graduation dinner. The arrogance was gone, scraped away by panic. Her hair was pulled back in a messy knot, strands falling loose around her face. She was wearing a wrinkled trench coat over sweatpants, and she was carrying a duffel bag that looked like it had been packed in the dark. I unlocked the door but left the chain on, opening it a few inches. "How did you find me?" I asked. She flinched at the coldness in my voice. "Mom gave it to me," she said. She looked down at her shoes. "They tracked my phone bill to the new service address. They have known for weeks, Mia. They just didn't say anything." I felt a flash of heat move up my neck. Violation. That was the only word for it. They had known where I was all along, keeping the information in their pocket like a trump card, waiting for the moment they would need to play it. Barbara looked up, and I saw the red rimming her eyes. "I just need somewhere to crash," she said. Her voice cracked. "Just for a night, please. I cannot go to them. Dad is screaming about the money, and Mom is crying non-stop. I just need to sleep." I looked at her. I saw the sister who had smirked when I got a gym membership. But I also saw a terrifying lack of options. She looked small. Against every alarm bell ringing in my head, I closed the door, slid the chain off, and opened it wide. "Come in," I said. One night, she stepped inside, bringing the chaotic energy of her life into my sanctuary. She dropped the duffel bag on my clean floor with a heavy thud. "Thank you," she breathed, looking around. "It is cozy." She used the same word she had used in her voicemail, but this time it lacked the bite of mockery. It was just an observation. My apartment was small, and she was desperate. I did not offer her food. I did not offer her a hug. I pointed to the gray sofa. "You can sleep there," I said. "I have an extra blanket in the closet." She nodded, sinking onto the cushions like her strings had been cut. That night, I locked my bedroom door. I lay in bed listening to the sounds of her moving in the living room. The creak of the floorboards. The rush of water in the bathroom. Felt like an infection had entered the apartment. One night turned into 2. Then 3. Then a week. Barbara did not leave. She did not mention looking for a place. She did not mention job applications. She settled in like a fog that refused to lift. She treated my apartment not as a favor, but as a temporary inconvenience she had to endure. She ate my groceries without asking. I would come home to find the milk carton empty, in the trash and crumbs on the counter. She used my expensive shampoo, leaving the bottle cap open and water pooling on the floor. She spent her days on my couch, watching television with the volume turned up too high, or whispering furiously into her phone, presumably to our parents. Whenever I walked into the room, she would hang up, or switch the screen off, creating a bubble of secrecy in my own home. She never said, "I messed up." She talked in circles about pressure. About how hard it was to be the one everyone expected greatness from. She spun a web of victimhood, where the casino was a predator and she was the innocent prey. By the 5th day, the air in the apartment felt thick. My sanctuary was gone. I dreaded coming home. I would sit in my car for 20 minutes after work, just to delay the moment. I had to walk through my own front door. On Sunday morning, I walked into the living room to find her painting her toenails on my coffee table. The smell of acetone was sharp and chemical, overpowering the scent of my lemon soap. She had my laptop open, watching a reality show. "Barbara," I said. She did not look up. "Yeah, you need to leave," I said. She paused, the brush hovering over her big toe. "What, it has been a week," I said. "I told you one night. You need to figure something else out. Today." She finally looked at me, and the pitiful, broken expression she had worn at the door vanished. In its place was the familiar, sharp, edged entitlement I knew so well. "What am I supposed to do?" she snapped. "Sleep in my car. That is up to you," I said. "But you cannot stay here." She laughed, a harsh, incredulous sound. "You are unbelievable. You have this whole place to yourself. You have a steady paycheck. Mom and Dad are right. You are selfish." I felt my pulse tick in my jaw. "I am not the one who gambled away a house," I said. Her face twisted. She stood up, knocking the bottle of nail polish over. Pink liquid spilled across the surface of my coffee table, dripping onto the rug. She did not apologize. She did not reach for a paper towel. She just stared at me with pure venom. "Fine," she spat. "I will go. But do not expect them to forgive you for this." I watched the polish soak into the rug. A permanent stain on the life I had built. I did not care about forgiveness. I just wanted my silence back. But as she began to throw her things into her bag, slamming drawers and muttering curses, I had a sinking feeling that getting her out the door would not be the end of the invasion. It was only the escalation. She left that night, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. The silence that followed should have been a relief, but instead, it felt brittle. The air in the apartment was charged with a static tension, the kind that precedes a lightning strike. I cleaned the nail polish off the rug, scrubbing until my knuckles were white, trying to erase the physical evidence of her presence. But the emotional stain was harder to remove. The backlash was immediate. By the time I woke up the next morning, my phone was a graveyard of guilt. My mother had left 3 voicemails. In the first, she was weeping, a soft, breathless sound that used to make me run to fix things. In the second, she was angry, accusing me of abandoning my flesh and blood to the wolves. In the third, she was cold, informing me that Barbara was suffering and that it was entirely on my conscience. My father followed with a text message. It was a block of text that read like a ledger of debts I had never agreed to incur. He listed the piano lessons I took at 10, the braces I wore at 12, the car they helped me buy at 18. He reminded me how much they had done for me, as if parental support was a loan I had unknowingly signed for at birth. And now the collection agency had come calling. Only one person pushed back against the narrative. My Uncle Marcus called me on his lunch break. His voice was low, conspiratorial. "You are not wrong, Mia," he said. "They know it. They are just not used to consequences. But be careful. Desperate people do desperate things." I wanted to believe that kicking her out was the end of it. I wanted to believe that drawing a hard line would force them to respect the boundary. But over the next 2 weeks, the atmosphere in my apartment shifted from tense to wrong. It started with sapphican things. Insignificant things. I would come home from work and find the throw blanket on the sofa folded differently than I had left it. I was meticulous about my space. I knew exactly how the fringe hung off the edge. One evening, I opened the refrigerator to grab a yogurt for breakfast, only to find the pack empty. I was sure I had bought a new one on Sunday. At first, I blamed myself. Stress messes with memory. Maybe I had eaten the yogurt in a daze. Maybe I had moved the blanket without thinking. I told myself I was being paranoid. That the guilt trips from my parents were seeping into my subconscious and making me doubt my own mind. Then came the smell. It was faint, lingering in the hallway near the bathroom. A sweet, cloying scent of vanilla and cheap musk. It was Barbara's perfume. I stood there, sniffing the air like a bloodhound, my heart hammering against my ribs. I checked the windows. Locked. I checked the deadbolt. Secured. I told myself it was a phantom scent, a sensory memory triggered by stress. But the unease did not leave. It grew. I started sleeping with a wedged under the doorknob. I woke up at every creak of the floorboards. One night, I noticed something that turned my paranoia into cold dread. The small window in my laundry nook, a tiny square of glass that looked out onto the fire escape, was not fully latched. I never opened that window. It was painted shut, or so I thought. I ran my finger along the sill. The dust was disturbed. I did not sleep that night. Instead, I set up a trap. Before I left for work the next morning, I positioned my old laptop on the kitchen counter, angling the webcam toward the hallway and the laundry nook. I covered the recording light with a piece of electrical tape and set it to record on motion. I went to work. I sat in meetings. I answered emails. All the while, my skin crawled with the feeling that I was being watched, that my life was being consumed while I was not there to protect it. When I got home, the apartment looked normal. The silence was intact. I walked straight to the laptop and stopped the recording. My hands were shaking so bad, I had to click the mouse twice to open the file. There was one video clip. Time stamped at 2 a.m. I pressed play. The video was grainy, shot in the low light of the street lamps filtering in from outside. For the first hour of the timestamp, nothing happened. Just the static image of my dark hallway. Then, movement. The window in the laundry nook slid open slowly. A hand appeared, gripping the frame. Then a leg. Barbara climbed in. She moved quietly, with a practiced ease that made my stomach turn. This was not the first time she had done this. She did not turn on the lights. She walked straight to the kitchen, the light from the fridge illuminating her face as she opened the door. She looked exhausted, her eyes dark circles in the pale glow. She drank juice straight from the carton. She ate a handful of grapes. Then, she walked into the living room and curled up on the rug, pulling one of my throw blankets over her. She slept there for 4 hours. At 6 a.m, just before my alarm was set to go off, she woke up. She folded the blanket, put it back on the sofa, though not quite right, and climbed back out the window. I sat there, staring at the frozen image of my sister sleeping on my floor like a stray cat. It was not just an invasion of privacy. It was a violation of my reality. She was living a shadow life in my home, feeding off my resources while I slept, convinced that her need justified her trespassing. I saved the video. Then I picked up the phone. I did not call my parents. I called Barbara. She answered on the second ring, her voice groggy. "Hello." "I know," I said. "Know what?" she asked, feigning confusion. I sent the video file to her phone. A moment later, I heard a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "If you ever come near my building again," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "I will call the police. I will show them this video. I will file for a restraining order, and I will have you arrested for breaking and entering." "Mia, please." She started to cry. I had nowhere else to go. It was cold. 1 hour, I said. "You have 1 hour to get as far away from here as possible. Do not test me." Hung up. My parents stopped asking after that. They stopped the guilt trips. They stopped the texts about family duty. But the silence that followed was not the peaceful quiet of victory. It was heavy and ominous. They were not reflecting on their actions. They were cornered. And, as Uncle Marcus had warned me, desperate people do desperate things. While I was busy locking my windows, they were already looking for another door to open. And this time, they would not need a key. They had something much more powerful. They had my name. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the other shoe finally dropped. The silence from my family had lasted for 6 days, a record in our volatile history. I should have known it was not the silence of reflection. It was the silence of people who were holding their breath, waiting to see if the fuse they had lit would detonate before they could get to safety. I came home early from work. exhausted by a series of budget meetings that felt trivial compared to the covert war I was fighting on my home front. The mail was waiting for me in the lobby, a small stack of flyers and bills. I thumbed through them absent-mindedly as I walked up the stairs. Electric bill. Internet. A coupon for a pizza place down the street. Then I stopped. The last envelope was plain white. No logo, no return address. Just my name, Mia Evans. Printed in a font that looked officiated and severe. It looked like a jury summons, or a tax audit. I unlocked my apartment door, dropped my keys in the bowl, and walked to the kitchen island. I poured myself a glass of water, my eyes never leaving the envelope. I slid my thumb under the flap and tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The header was red. Final notice. I frowned. I paid my bills on the first of every month. I was obsessive about it. My credit score was the one thing in my life that was perfect, a numerical representation of my reliability. I scanned the page, looking for the mistake. It said, I owed a payment of $412 on a personal loan, with a total balance of $28,412. I read it 3 times. I checked the account number. It was not mine. I checked the name. It was definitely mine. I put the glass of water down. My hand was shaking so hard the water sloshed over the rim, darkening the wood of the counter. This is a scam, I said aloud. My voice sounded thin in the empty room. I sat down at the counter and pulled out my phone. I dialed the number listed on the letterhead, ready to fight with some scammer in a call center. But the voice that answered was automated, professional, and attached to a legitimate mid-tier bank I recognized. I navigated the menu until I got a human being. A woman named Sarah answered. She sounded tired. I am calling about a letter I received, I said. There has been a mistake. I never took out a loan with you. Can you verify your social security number? She asked. I gave it to her, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Thank you, Mia, she said. I see the account here. It was opened 6 weeks ago. The first payment was scheduled via auto draft, but it failed due to insufficient funds. That is why the letter was generated. 6 weeks ago. The timeline clicked into place like the tumbler of a lock. 6 weeks ago was the week she lost the house. The week after Barbara lost the house. Can you tell me where the funds were disbursed? I asked. My voice was eerily calm. I felt like I was floating above my own body, watching a disaster unfold in slow motion. One moment, Sarah said. I heard the clicking of a keyboard. The sound was loud, aggressive. The funds were wire transferred to a business checking account, she said. Ending in 4099. The entity is listed as Evans Consulting Group. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the counter to keep from falling off the stool. Evans Consulting Group. That was my father's LLC. It was the shell company he used for his freelance consulting work, but mostly, it was the pot of money he used to fund the family's lifestyle. They had not just asked me for money. They had not just guilted me. They had used my information, my perfect credit, my identity, to secure a loan to cover Barbara's gambling debt. They had forged my signature. They had committed a felony. I thanked Sarah and hung up. I sat there for a long time. The sun moved across the floor, stretching the shadows of the bar stools into long, dark fingers. I did not cry. Crying was for people who were hurt. I was not hurt. I was clarified. For my entire life, I thought my role in the family was the responsible one. The boring one. The safety net. But I was wrong. I was not a person to them. I was a resource. I was a credit score to be harvested. I was an asset to be liquidated when the golden child set herself on fire. The betrayal was so absolute it burned away the fear. I stood up and walked to my laptop. I did not panic. I entered what I called work mode. I logged into my credit monitoring service. There it was. A hard inquiry from 6 weeks ago. A new account I had missed because I had been too busy moving, too busy running away. I downloaded the loan agreement. I saw the digital signature. It was my name. But the IP address logged for the signing was not mine. It was the IP address for my parents' home Wi-Fi. I printed everything. The collection letter. The banknotes I had scribbled down. The credit report. The IP log. I stacked the papers neatly and slid them into a manila folder. I walked to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked the same as I had that morning. But the eyes staring back were different. They were hard. They were the eyes of a stranger. I went to my closet and put on my coat. I checked my phone. It was 6 p.m. They would all be there. My mother would be cooking dinner. My father would be watching the news. Barbara would probably be on the couch, complaining about the injustice of having to live in a studio apartment. They thought the storm had passed. They thought that because I had stopped replying to texts, I had accepted my fate. They thought they had gotten away with it because they always got away with it. I picked up the manila folder. It felt heavy, not with paper, but with potential energy. I walked out of my apartment and locked the door. I did not tremble. I did not hesitate. I walked to my car, got in, and turned the key. The engine roared to life, a growl that matched the cold, vibrating rage in my chest. I drove toward the suburbs, toward the house that was no longer a home, but a crime scene. I was not going there to argue. I was going there to deliver a verdict. The drive to my parents' house took 40 minutes. I spent every second of it in silence. I did not turn on the radio. I did not roll down the windows. I needed the containment. My mind was a closed circuit, replaying the facts, the dates, and the numbers. $28,000. 6 weeks. Fraud. When I turned onto their street, the familiarity of it hit me like a physical blow. The oak trees were still arching over the road, casting long, spiderweb shadows under the street lamps. The neighbors were still putting out their recycling bins. It was a terrifyingly normal Tuesday night in a neighborhood that prided itself on normalcy. I pulled into the driveway behind my father's sedan. The house was lit up like a stage. The warm yellow glow from the living room bay window spilled onto the lawn, illuminating the manicured hedges and the pristine walkway. From the outside, it looked inviting. It looked safe. But I knew better, knew that the warmth inside was manufactured, powered by appearances and funded by money that did not belong to them. I killed the engine and sat in the dark for a moment, gripping the manila folder. My heart was not racing anymore. It had settled into a slow, heavy thud, like a war drum. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked pale, but my jaw was set. I looked like someone who had nothing left to lose. I got out of the car and walked up the steps. I did not ring the doorbell. I still had my key on my ring, a remnant of a life I thought I had left behind. I slid it into the lock. It turned smoothly. I pushed the door open and stepped into the foyer. The smell hit me first: pot roast and lemon polish. It was the scent of my childhood, a sensory trigger that usually made me feel small and compliant. Tonight, it just smelled like a lie. I could hear the television in the living room. The murmur of a news anchor, followed by the laugh track of a sitcom. I walked down the hallway, my heels clicking sharply on the hardwood floor. My mother was the first to see me. She was sitting in her usual armchair, knitting something beige. She looked up, her face registering surprise, then a flicker of annoyance, then a practiced mask of welcome. "Mia," she said, lowering her needles. "You should have called." We were just settling in for the night. I did not answer. I walked past her into the center of the room. My father was on the sofa, a glass of scotch in his hand. He looked tired, his face slack with the kind of exhaustion that comes from maintaining a facade. Barbara was there, too. She was curled up on the love seat, scrolling through her phone, looking bored. She looked up at me, her eyes narrowing. "What are you doing here?" Barbara asked. "Did you come to apologize for kicking me out?" I stood in the middle of the oriental rug, the one my mother forbade us to walk on with shoes when we were children. I did not take my shoes off. I looked at each of them. My mother, the enabler. My father, the architect. My sister, the parasite. They looked so comfortable. They were warm, fed, and safe. And they had bought that safety with my future. I threw the manila folder onto the coffee table. It landed with a heavy slap, sliding across the polished wood and hitting my father's coaster. "Explain?" I said. My father frowned, looking down at the folder without touching it. "What is this, Mia?" "We are watching a program." "Open it," I said. My voice was low, devoid of any inflection. It sounded like a stranger's voice. He sighed, the long, suffering sigh of a man who believes he is being unreasonably inconvenienced. He set his glass down and leaned forward, flipping the folder open. My mother craned her neck to see. Barbara did not move, but her thumb stopped scrolling. My father stared at the top page for a long time. It was the final notice letter. I watched his eyes move across the lines. I watched the moment he recognized the account number. I watched the color drain from his face, leaving it gray and waxy. He closed the folder quickly, as if the paper inside were radioactive. "Where did you get this?" he asked. His voice was tight. "It came to my apartment," I said. "Today." "Because you stopped paying the bill." My mother stood up, her knitting sliding to the floor. "Robert," she asked, her voice trembling. "What is it?" My father did not look at her. He looked at me. His eyes were hard, defensive. "We were going to tell you," he said. I laughed. It was a short, sharp sound that felt like a bark. "When?" I asked. "When the sheriff showed up to arrest me. When my wages were garnished. When I went to buy a car and found out I had the credit score of a bankruptcy case." My mother walked to the table and opened the folder. She read the letter, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh," she whispered. "Oh, my God. It got out of hand," my father said, standing up to face me. He tried to make himself tall, assuming the posture of the patriarch, the man in charge. "We had a liquidity issue. Barbara needed help. The casino sharks were calling the house Mia. They were threatening us. We needed cash fast, and my credit is tied up." "So you stole mine," I said. "I did not steal it," he snapped. "I borrowed it. It was a bridge loan. I intended to pay it off before you ever found out." "You used my social security number," I said, stepping closer to him. "You forged my digital signature. You routed the money to your shell company. That is not borrowing, Dad. That is identity theft. That is bank fraud. That is a federal crime." Barbara sat up, dropping her phone. "You are overreacting," she scoffed. "It is just money. Dad said he would pay it back. Why do you always have to make everything into a tragedy?" I turned to her. The golden child. Even now, sitting in the wreckage she had caused, she could not see past her own ego. "This is $28,000, Barbara," I said. "Do you have $28,000? She rolled her eyes. "I am working on it." "No, you are not," I said. "You are sitting on a love seat watching sitcoms while I get collection letters." My mother stepped between us, her hands raised in a placating gesture. "Mia, please. Lower your voice. The neighbors." "I do not care about the neighbors," I shouted. The volume of my voice made her flinch. "I care about the fact that you destroyed my financial life, to save her from consequences she earned." "We did what we had to do," my father yelled back. His face was flushing red. "We are a family. We help each other. We do not let our own drown." "You let me drown," I said. The room went quiet. The sitcom laugh track filled the silence, manic and inappropriate. "What?" my mother asked, her voice barely a whisper. "At graduation," I said. "You gave her a house. You gave me a gym membership. You made it clear then who mattered and who did not. I accepted that. I walked away. I let you have your golden child. But that was not enough for you. You had to come after what I built for myself. We raised you," my father said. He pointed a finger at me, shaking with rage. "We fed you. We clothed you. We paid for your college. Do you think that was free?" You owe us, Mia. You owe this family your loyalty. If we need your credit for a few months to save your sister from ruin, that is the least you can do. There it was. The truth. It hung in the air between us. Ugly and undeniable. I looked at my father. I looked at the man who had taught me to ride a bike, who had sat at the head of the dinner table for 30 years. And I realized, with a clarity that was both liberating and devastating, that he did not see me as a daughter. He saw me as an investment that had finally matured. He believed he owned me. He believed that my stability, my hard work, my name, were all just extensions of his property. I felt the last tether snap. The invisible cord that connects a child to their parent, the one made of guilt and hope and the desperate need for approval, finally broke. No, I said. My father blinked. Excuse me, I do not owe you, I said. My voice was steady again, deadly calm. I do not owe you for raising me. That was your job. You chose to have children. I did not sign a contract at birth agreeing to be your financial collateral. You are being ungrateful, my mother cried. She was crying now, real tears, streaming down her cheeks. We are in a crisis, Mia. You are in a crisis, I corrected. I am in a crime scene. I looked down at the folder on the table. The evidence of their betrayal. I reached out and picked it up. Put that back, my father said, stepping forward. I clutched the folder to my chest. No, I said. This is mine. This is my name. This is my debt. And I am taking it with me. Where are you going? Barbara asked. Her voice held a trace of nervousness now. She could sense the shift in the room. She could feel that the old rules, the ones where she won and I folded, were dissolving. I am going to fix this, I said. Maya. Be reasonable, my father said. His tone shifted from aggressive to bargaining. We can work out a payment plan. I have a deal closing next month. I can pay off the interest. Just give me a few weeks. Do not do anything rash. I looked at him, and I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just a cold, clinical distance. I was looking at a stranger who had tried to rob me. It is too late for deals, I said. I turned around and started walking toward the door. Maya! My mother screamed. Come back here. Do not walk away from your family. I kept walking. I walked down the hallway, past the family photos that smiled down at me, lies frozen in frames. I walked past the kitchen where I had learned to make coffee, past the stairs I had run up 1,000 times. I opened the front door and stepped out into the night. The air was cool and crisp. I could hear my father shouting something behind me, something about duty and respect, but his voice sounded small, muffled by the heavy oak door as it swung shut behind me. I walked to my car. I did not run. I did not look back. I placed the folder on the passenger seat, treating it with the reverence of a holy artifact. I got in, started the engine, and backed out of the driveway. As I drove away, I saw the silhouette of my father standing in the bay window, watching me go. He looked small. He looked trapped. I was not trapped. I was free. But freedom, I was learning, had a cost. And tonight, I was going to make sure the right people paid the bill. I reached for my phone, but I did not call a friend. I did not call my uncle. I unlocked the screen and opened my contacts, scrolling down to the letter P. I was done being the daughter. It was time to be the plaintiff. I pulled into the parking lot of the North District Police Station 10 minutes later. The building was a squat, ugly block of concrete, bathed in the harsh, sterile glow of blue security lights. It looked like a fortress. It looked like the end of the line. I put the car in park but kept the engine running. The heater hummed, fighting against the chill of the night, but I was shivering. It was not from cold. It was from the adrenaline crashing through my system, leaving behind a shaky, hollow feeling in my chest. I looked down at my phone. The screen was still lit, the contact list open to the letter P. The non-emergency line was there. So was the direct line for the fraud department, a number I had looked up earlier that day. I looked at the folder on the passenger seat. Inside was the smoking gun. The IP logs that traced the digital signature back to my parents' router. The bank transfer records, showing the money moving into my father's shell company. It was enough to indict them. It was enough to put my father in handcuffs and my mother in front of a judge. I stared at the entrance of the station. A couple of officers were standing outside, smoking cigarettes, their breath puffing out in white clouds. If I walked through those double doors, there was no turning back. Once a report was filed, the machinery of the law would start turning, and I would not be able to stop it. It would grind my family into dust. I took a deep breath, inhaling the smell of old leather and stale air conditioning. I did not want to send my father to prison. I did not want to see my mother on the news. I just wanted my life back. I wanted the theft to stop. I picked up the phone. I did not dial the police. I dialed my father. He answered on the first ring. "Mia?" His voice was breathless, frantic. "Where are you? Come back to the house. We can talk about this. We can work something out." I did not go back to the house, I said. My voice was calm, terrifyingly steady in the small cabin of the car. I am sitting in the parking lot of the North District Police Station. There was a silence on the other end. A heavy, suffocating silence that stretched for 5 seconds. "What?" he whispered. "I am looking at the front doors, Dad," I said. "I have the folder on the seat next to me. I have the IP logs. I have the bank statements. I have everything I need to file a formal report for identity theft, wire fraud, and grand larceny." "You would not," he said. The bluster was returning, the disbelief that his property would dare to rebel. "You would not arrest your own father. Think about what that would do to us. Think about my reputation. You should have thought about that before you forged my signature," I said. "Mia, listen to me," he said, his voice dropping to a growl. "If you walk into that station, you are dead to this family. Do you understand? You will never be welcome in our home again." I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Dad," I said, "I am already dead to this family. I was dead the minute you decided I was worth less than Barbara's gambling debts. I was dead the minute you looked at me and saw a credit score instead of a daughter." I reached for the door handle. The plastic was cold under my fingers. "I am going to give you a choice," I said. "And you have exactly 60 seconds to make it." "What choice?" he snapped. "Option 1, I said. "I hang up this phone. I walk through those doors. I hand this folder to the detective on duty. By tomorrow morning, you will be in a holding cell, and Mom will be calling a lawyer she cannot afford." I paused, letting the image sink in. I knew my father. He cared about 2 things: money and appearances. Prison would destroy both. "Option 2, I continued. You log into your bank account right now. You wire the full balance of $28,412 to the loan servicer. You pay it off. Tonight, you send me the confirmation receipt. Then, you close the account." "I do not have that kind of liquidity," he shouted. "I told you, my capital is tied up in the business. I cannot just conjure 30 grand out of thin air." "Find it," I said. "Mia, be reasonable. Find it," I screamed, my voice cracking with the force of the anger I had been suppressing for years. "Sell the sedan. Sell Mom's jewelry. Liquidate your stocks. I do not care. You found a way to steal it. You can find a way to pay it back." I pulled the door handle. The interior light flicked on, casting a yellow glow over the folder. "I am opening the car door, Dad," I said. "I am stepping out." "No. Wait," I heard a scuffle on the other end. Voices were raised in the background. My mother was crying. Barbara was shouting something unintelligible. "Robert, pay it," I heard my mother scream. "Pay it. I am not going to jail. Give me the phone." That was Barbara. There was a fumble, and then my sister's voice came on the line. She sounded shrill, panicked, and furious. "You are bluffing," she spat. "You are just trying to scare us. You are too weak to do it. You have always been the soft one, Mia. The one who takes it." I stepped out of the car. The cold wind hit my face, biting and sharp. I slammed the door shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the empty lot. I am walking toward the entrance, Barbara, I said. I am 30 feet away. I could hear her breathing on the other end. Fast, shallow breaths. 20 feet, I said. I can see the officer at the front desk. He is looking at me.
Mia!
Stop! My father yelled from the background. Stop! I am logging in. I am doing it. I stopped. I stood on the pavement, 10 feet from the glass doors of the police station. I could see the reflection of the blue lights in the glass. I could see my own reflection, a dark figure in a heavy coat, phone pressed to my ear. Do it, I said. Put me on speaker. I want to hear the keystrokes. There was a moment of silence. Then the sound of the phone being set down on a hard surface. I heard the tap, tap, tap of aggressive typing. I heard my father muttering curses under his breath. I waited. The wind whipped my hair across my face, but I did not move. I stood like a statue, a sentinel guarding the ruins of my own trust. It is done, my father said, his voice thick with defeat. I transferred the funds from the emergency savings. It is gone. The loan is zeroed out. Send me the screenshot, I said. I am sending it. My phone buzzed against my ear. I pulled it away and looked at the screen. A new email notification. I opened it. There was an image attachment. A screenshot of a transaction confirmation. $28,412 paid to the loan provider. Balance remaining 0. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding since graduation. My knees felt weak, threatening to buckle, but I locked them. I was not done yet. Close the account, I said. I cannot close it until the payment posts, he argued. Then you will send me proof of closure within 3 business days, I said. And Dad? What? He hissed. If I ever see another inquiry on my credit report, if I ever get another letter, if you ever try to use my name again, I will not call you. I will not come to the house. I will just come here, and I will not stop at the parking lot. I heard him swallow. The sound was audible even over the static. We are done, he said. You got what you wanted. Are you happy? You bankrupted us. That was our retirement money, Mia. That was our safety net. You stole my safety net first, I said. Then Barbara's voice cut in again. She sounded different now. The panic had been replaced by a cold, dawn-like realization of her own position. What about me? She asked. I put the phone back to my ear. What about you? If they used the emergency savings, she said, her voice rising in pitch, then how are they going to pay for my apartment? How am I supposed to pay my rent next month? I do not have a job, Mia. I lost the house. I have nothing. I looked up at the night sky. It was vast and indifferent. I thought about the gym membership. I thought about the nights I spent eating rice and beans to save for my deposit. I thought about the way she had looked sleeping on my rug, taking what wasn't hers because she believed the world owed her a soft landing. You have hands, I said. You have a brain. You are capable. I cannot do this alone, she screamed. I cannot live like this. You have a good job. You have a nice life. You could help me. And you are choosing not to. I closed my eyes. I saw her clearly in my mind, standing in the wreckage of the life she had refused to build, looking for a hand to pull her out. I already helped you, I said quietly. What? She asked. I helped you by stepping aside, I said. I helped you by letting you face your own choices. There was a stunned silence on the other end. She did not know how to process a world where she was not the victim, where I was not the savior. I hung up the phone. I stood there for a long moment, listening to the hum of the city. The police station loomed behind me, a weapon I had drawn but not fired. I did not need it anymore. The threat was enough. The fear was enough. I walked back to my car. My legs felt heavy, but my chest felt light. I got in and tossed the phone onto the passenger seat next to the folder. I looked at the screenshot one more time. 0 balance. I started the engine. The heat blasted against my frozen fingers. I put the car in reverse and backed out of the spot. I drove out of the parking lot, leaving the blue lights behind me. I did not drive back to my parents' house. I did not drive to celebrate. I drove toward the highway, toward the city, toward the small, quiet apartment that belonged to me. I was alone. I had burned the bridge. I had made myself an orphan by choice. But as the city skyline rose up in front of me, glittering with a million lights, I realized something. I was not afraid. For the first time in 30 years, the fear was gone. They had nothing left to hold over me. They had nothing left to take. I was the villain in their story, but I was finally the hero in mine. 3 months have passed since I sat in that police station parking lot. The winter has melted into spring. And with the change of season, the ice around my life has finally thawed. I moved again. I did not run away this time. I upgraded. My new apartment is on the 4th floor of a building with a doorman and a security gate. It has a balcony that overlooks the park, and for the first time in my life, I have a guest room. It stays empty, but I like knowing it is there. I like knowing I have space that no one is trying to occupy without my permission. The technical cleanup was tedious but satisfying. 3 days after the confrontation, I received the official letter from the bank. The loan was paid in full. The account was closed. I did not trust it to stay that way. I placed a freeze on my credit reports at all 3 bureaus. I set up alerts that would ping my phone if anyone even whispered my social security number into a database. I changed my passwords, my email address, even my bank. I built a digital fortress around my identity, one that no amount of guilt or family obligation could breach. I have not spoken to my parents. The silence is different now. It is not a weapon they are using to punish me. It is a boundary I am using to protect myself. I still hear about them, though. Uncle Marcus calls me on Sundays. He keeps the updates brief, respecting the new rules of engagement. He told me that Barbara is working. She picked up 2 shifts at a diner downtown. She is living in a studio apartment above a garage, paying her own rent. It is not the house she was given, but it is the life she earned. He told me my parents are quieter. They complain about money, about the loss of their savings, but they never mention my name. They are afraid. They finally understand that I am not a bluff. I am a consequence. A week ago, the past tried to knock on my door one last time. I was repotting my pothos plant, moving it to a bigger clay pot to accommodate its new growth, when the buzzer rang. I checked the video intercom. It was Barbara. She looked tired. She was wearing a uniform from the diner, and her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She did not look like the golden child. She looked like a woman who was tired of running. "I just need to talk," she said to the camera. Her voice was tinny coming through the speaker. "I just want to say I am sorry." I stared at the screen. I saw the fatigue in her eyes. I saw the hesitation. Part of me, the old part that had spent 30 years trying to be the good sister, wanted to buzz her up. I wanted to give her a glass of water and tell her I was proud of her for getting a job. But I knew that opening the door would crack the seal. An apology would turn into a conversation. A conversation would turn into a request. And a request would turn into an invasion. I pressed the button to speak. "I am glad you are figuring it out, Barbara," I said. "But you cannot be here." "Mia, please," she said. "I am really trying." "I know," I said. "Keep trying. But do it over there." I hung up the intercom. I watched her stand on the sidewalk for a long minute. She looked up at the building, shielding her eyes from the sun. Then, she turned around and walked away. She did not slam anything. She did not scream. She just accepted the no. It was the most honest interaction we had ever had. I went back to my plant. I bought a second one yesterday, a small snake plant that sits on the windowsill next to the pothos. They are both thriving. They have light. They have water, and they have peace. I made myself a cup of tea and sat on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker to life as the sun went down. The air was cool, but I was not cold. I thought about the gym membership. I thought about the scratch on the dining room table. I thought about the debt letter. Those things felt like artifacts from a different life, belonging to a woman I barely recognized. I used to think that walking away would ruin me. I used to think that being alone was the worst thing that could happen to a person. I was wrong. Love without limits is not love. It is permission to be used. And walking away did not make me heartless. It made me free. I took a sip of my tea. The steam rose up, curling into the evening air. Below me, the city was loud and chaotic, but up here, everything was quiet. I was safe. And for the first time, the silence is not something I had to endure. It was something I could enjoy.